Last year, 1 in 5 children was sexually solicited online. Help delete online predators. Call 1-800-THE-LOST or visit cybertipline.com to learn how to protect your kids' online life. A message from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and the Ad Council.
This is Detroit's Progressive Talk, 1310 WDTW, Dearborn, Detroit. Listen 24 hours a day on iHeartRadio. The comments views, opinions, or beliefs of this radio station and or Clear Channel Radio.
Stay tuned for the Medical Marijuana Radio Show, brought to you by the American Medical Marijuana Professionals on Gratiot and Roseville. For certifications, call 1-877-RX-42099. The law offices of Targowski and Grow remind you to stand up for your rights. Always treat law enforcement with respect, but if you're detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search or seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to talk to my attorneys, John Targowski and Daniel Grow. Targowski and Grow have the education and experience you need to be successful in Michigan courts. Call Targowski and Grow toll-free, 800-957-1069. The law offices of Targowski and Grow, 800-957-1069. Hey, Steve Greene here to tell you about my good friends over at the Hydro Hut Garden Supply Store in Inkster. Why am I so excited about Hydro Hut? The $200 Mad Light deal. That's right. $200 gets you a 1,000-watt high-pressure sodium bulb, an E-wing reflector, and a digital ballast. That's right, a digital one. Call them today at 313-228-5544. It's Hydro Hut. It's 20% off on your first purchase, but you got to mention the Medical Marijuana Radio Show to get it. Check them out at hydrohutonline.com. That's Hydro Hut at hydrohutonline.com.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock. I'm John King with WHMI News. A Detroit radio host who advocates for medical marijuana says his plans to broadcast from Balloon Fest went up in smoke thanks to the Howell Area Chamber of Commerce. Steve Greene hosts the Medical Marijuana Radio Show on station 1310 WDTW AM, but grew up in Howell. He says in setting summer goals for the show, he felt it would be a funny tie-in with the Up and Away theme, but also a technical challenge to do a live broadcast from a hot air balloon, both on the radio and the internet. He says he posed the idea to the chamber and was later contacted by Michigan Challenge Director Michelle Token, who instructed him to meet at the VIP area last Friday. Greene says once they arrived at the launch field, they were assisted in finding a location for a live broadcast booth and started setting up. He says he provided his nationally accredited Press Association credentials with photo ID, as well as a station invoice to Token, who left to get the local credentials. He says she returned 20 minutes later, though, with a police officer asking him to leave, saying she was sorry, but local credentials had to be done in advance. Greene says they packed up and exited the field, but returned to attend the pilot briefing, where he was told to leave again, and another police officer was brought over. He says accommodations had already been made to pair him up with 2 pilots in different balloons, so the decision to backpedal and pretend they didn't know who he was or what media outlet he was from is incredulous at best.
The idea that they would show up with a uniformed Howell City police officer to escort us out of the building is absolutely incensing me. It was there on somebody's invite. This is just strictly about they didn't want the association of the reporting from this show. In a community that has long been mired in, the spatial connection with Kahakta and the Robert Miles farm and the whole KKK thing. Howell's always had to wear that ugly, awful scarlet letter, even though it really doesn't belong to them. A community that's got that kind of an issue at play, this is exactly the kind of thing that Howell should be not doing.
Howell Chamber Director Pat Convery tells WHMI the Michigan Challenge Balloon Fest welcomes media with proper identification, indicating they work for a recognized media outlet. She says when credentialed by them, media representatives then have full access to the entire venue, including the launch field, which is controlled by their Balloon Meister, competition director, and the FAA. Convery concluded by saying Mr. Greene was unable to provide identification, indicating he worked for station 1310, although she did not reference the invoice that he said he did provide.
Countdown to launch. It's the Medical Marijuana
Launch commit.
Radio Show.
Guidance is internal. Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. Power clear.
The Medical Marijuana Radio Show is a production of the Medical Marijuana Radio Network.
You tuned in to that Medical Marijuana Show. 855 M Radio. Keep it legal. Keep it legal. Keep it legal. Keep it legal. Hey.
It's a 4th of July weekend, and welcome to the Medical Marijuana Radio Show once again, where we are live in Detroit.
Okay, Steve is the host with the co-host Denise. Starting at noon Saturdays every week. Yes, we keeping you legal. Legislators and lawyers, doctors and their growers. This show is for the people. Michigan medical marijuana, no hassle. We talk about anything, any issue we can handle. Call us up and let us know what is on your mind. And make sure when you do it legal every time. Hey. You tune in to that medical marijuana show. 855-MMM Radio. Keep it legal, keep it legal, keep it legal, keep it legal. Hey. You tuned in to that medical marijuana show. 855-MMM Radio. Keep it legal, keep it legal, keep it legal, keep it legal.
Pants on fire. Liar, liar, pants on fire.
That's all I gotta say. You know, that whole business with the Howell Balloon Fest turned into something crazy. I mean, we talked about this. We couldn't stop talking about it last week. We intended to make it a 15-minute topic. It ended up, taking up most of the show. And I don't want to do that with this show because we've got a lot of stuff going on, but let's get it off our chest.
It's important because it just goes to the insidious nature of the attitude still of local officials, of the negative connotations just by being associated with marijuana. The impression that people have out there that marijuana is just this bad, evil subculture drug, it's astounding to me. Still, 4 years now after the act passed, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but see, Howell has never gotten out of other times.
I told you it was like Kentucky, but I didn't realize it extended up through the chamber. I'm so disappointed.
Did you see the story that the newspaper printed that the Livingston Daily did?
I did.
Did you see online the awful comments?
No, actually, I haven't. I apologize. It's on my to-do list for this weekend.
Well, we're going to do it now.
And I'll get, what I'll do is I'll get really worked up and then I'll write my letter to the chamber that forgot that I belonged. I can't wait.
She's gonna make an exercise out of this.
Well, at least Pat remembered me because she was the one that hounded me for 2 years to join,
Well, I mean, the chamber.
But it's not about us personally. You know what this is? It's an really deep-seated, long-term negative association with marijuana, and it's a reputation that's going to take a while to correct. It really is. But I mean, I think education. I've said this from day one. Education is key. Education is key. You would not believe the different places in society where you find your allies. One of the first people I remember that I never thought that would become sort of an ally in the war on drugs, marijuana as an alternative form of medication is an associate of mine who has a son who's very severely ADHD and has been exploring, is one of those people that she doesn't do any inoculation. She doesn't get her kids immunized, or she doesn't.
That's
she's
dangerous.
She's very, very, very conservative, strict Christian evangelist type. But
is she one of these people that thinks that the inoculation is going to cause autism?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. But I mean, I understand. I mean, they do go overboard with some of those sometimes. I mean, like I didn't get my kids re-inoculated for chickenpox because that's stupid. But she's strict Christian evangelist, very conservative, socially. But we really found a lot of common ground when it came to alternative medication because that's where you find it. She gets that it's a plant and it's natural and it hasn't been messed with or changed by a pharmaceutical company. And she agrees that a natural form of healing is best. And it's interesting where you find your common ground. It really is. And that's in Howell.
Yeah.
But, I was still shocked. I think it just goes to the fact that we still have a lot of work to do.
Well, this is just now, mind you, I don't want to paint with a broad brush. I'm not that guy.
But you're gonna go ahead, start painting, Steve.
I'm just gonna say
Get
that
out your paintbrush.
No, I'm not gonna do it. I'm just gonna say that this was one of the responses that I got back. I didn't get anything really that wasn't like this.
Okay.
This is posted. I posted this response. It's a letter. It's actually an email that I got back from one of the guys that was posting on, responding to the paper article in the paper. Dear Steve, how? Because I really went on to say about how this was, these guys were kind of jerks. Dear Steve, Howell isn't Cohocton. It's not Ann Arbor either, hippie. We don't need more drug abuser promoters in our town, especially flying over our homes. Go hang out with the bong-hit radicals in Ann Arbor who will welcome you with open arms. Or just pack up and move to San Francisco where you can get some, what does it say?
It says where you can smoke both your joints and the pole.
Can you believe that?
With no repercussions.
And you can get some congressional representation as a fringe benefit from that moonbat Nancy Pelosi.
It says deranged yet idiot. This is the thing. Some of this time, you have to realize that some of the people that hang out on these websites don't have anything better to do.
Look, there was a guy named his handle on Facebook is Hitman.
Oh my God.
He's in hell.
Wait, I want to read the rest of this. This is incredible. The only way I'd support you participating next year in our town's festival, if you were featured in a live drop from a balloon into Thompson Lake from about 2,000 feet.
Let it finish, dude. Come on.
That's something I watched from my boat. Regards, Paul.
One more time. Say it again because it
says
Ryan stepped on you.
The only way I'd support you participating next year in our town's festival is if you were featured in a live drop from a balloon into Thompson Lake from about 2,000 feet. That's something I'd watch from my boat.
So apparently the guy lives on Thompson Lake with a boat.
Paul what?
His name is Kersey. Paul Kersey is the guy's name.
Huh.
He only answers at Paul K in the letter, but his name is Paul Kersey. And I posted this. I think a lot of people emailed him back with some response.
Hey, dear Paul Kersey, that's not your town, by the way.
Yeah.
I just FYI, I'm just going to take a guess that he's not listening, but I'm going to say this anyway. Maybe he is. Paul, it's not your town. It doesn't belong to you. I get that you live there, but, if you want a town where nobody is, that somebody that you don't agree with or don't like, go buy an island. Or,
this wasn't the only guy. I mean, like I said, there was a guy named...
Wow. I mean, I'm all for freedom of speech. If he wants to rant like a completely closed-minded, backwoods hick idiot, fine, that's fine.
Oh, they were mad for me saying hick or saying conservative or saying redneck. They were all pissed off.
What about white trash?
But they support a hate crime.
What about wait. Hick inbred white trash. How's that?
I didn't get that far.
You know what? I live in Howell. I've lived in Howell 11 years, and I can tell you without question that 80% of Howell is hick inbred white trash. And I'm not afraid to say it because people own that there. But there are people who are intelligent and have free thinking. Yeah. There are. There just aren't that many of them yet. And look, this is the thing, okay? And this is the thing about Howell and Livingston County that you have to understand. The majority of people that live there and act and think this way are not only uneducated, but they don't want to be educated. Right. They enjoy their lack of informed education. They are happy
How about
and content.
Lack of diversity?
Yeah, they're happy and content in their little,
bubble.
Hating corner of the world. I was absolutely shocked when I first moved to Howell in Livingston County about how conservative it was. So,
yeah, it's
and I mean, there's a difference between social conservatism and being outright, racist and bigoted. And I was so surprised.
Well, it's nice to want to, preserve your community as much as you can. but what are you preserving? Really. I mean,
it's unfortunate. You see a lot of this in Howell, and I'm sorry because I live in Howell and I work in Howell, but I see this all the time. I'm happy to say that a lot of people aren't like this. But
all right, more to come. Dan Riffle coming up next for the Marijuana Policy Project and the Medical Marijuana Radio Show.
Got something to say? Call now toll free. 855-MMM Radio. The Medical Marijuana Radio Network.
If you or someone you know received a traffic ticket, has been charged with a misdemeanor, drinking and driving, criminal offense, or has had their driver's license taken away, they need an attorney. They need attorney Glenn McCandless. He's helped hundreds of people solve their legal problems over the past 16 years.
My law firm is dedicated to providing quality legal services at affordable rates.
Call us at 586-755-2900. Again, that's 586-755-2900. Call now.
The Committee for a Safer Michigan is collecting signatures to put repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults on the November ballot, and we need your help. Outlawing marijuana has not reduced its availability, made society safe, nor reduced access for minors. Marijuana prohibition has wasted limited tax dollars, put otherwise law-abiding citizens in handcuffs, eroded the public's relationship with law enforcement, and denied relief to seriously ill, injured, and dying citizens that were supposed to be protected by the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. The Committee for a Safer Michigan is working to legalize marijuana for adults, and we need your help to put it on the ballot. Go to repealtoday.org to find out more about this historic effort. That's repealtoday.org to learn more, or call 269-548-8422 to end prohibition and sign the petition. Ending marijuana prohibition will reduce access by minors, allow law enforcement to focus on violent crime, reduce gang activity and organized crime, and create jobs by allowing a new Michigan hemp industry. Paid for with regulated funds by the Committee for a Safer Michigan, 2930 East Jefferson Avenue, Detroit, Michigan, 48207. The law offices of Targowski and Grow remind you to stand up for your rights. Always treat law enforcement with respect, but if you're detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search or seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to talk to my attorneys, John Targowski and Daniel Grow. Targowski and Grow have the education and experience you need to be successful in Michigan courts. Call Targowski and Grow toll-free, 800-957-1069. The law offices of Targowski and Grow, 800-957-1069.
I'm wide awake. I'm wide awake.
It's the Medical Marijuana Radio Show.
I'm wide awake.
Welcome back to the Medical Marijuana Radio Show. I missed on the open our introduction. I'm a patient and caregiver, Steve Greene. Rick Thompson's on assignment. He's actually up with family hanging out in northern Michigan today. I'm kind of jealous.
That's an assignment.
To my side today, Denise Policella, our co-host, and then Ryan is our intern from Specs Howard. He's done with Specs now, aren't you? You're all.
Yeah, our graduation's coming up, but I've been done for a couple weeks now.
And now you're out looking for work.
Yes. Gotta find an income.
Degree. Hurry, go get a law degree. I need help.
Ryan's going to do the news for us a little bit later. Hopefully better than last time around. We're trying to get Ryan better. That's our game.
What's wrong with Ryan?
We don't have that kind of time.
Really? Well,
Get a pen.
We're getting him to breathe in between words and sentences. Is that it?
What's wrong with Ryan? I don't know.
It's an open question.
No, I'm just kidding. Ryan's if you heard the last newscast, you'll know what's wrong with yeah. It's just, it's a building process. It takes a minute to get better. We're giving him that opportunity.
This is also his public speaking class credit.
No, he's all done with the credit.
Well.
So, with us on the phone, supposedly, was supposed to be Dan Riffle from the Marijuana Policy Project. He's in Washington, D.C. now. He called up earlier before we started the show, getting ready, and I had him give his phone number to Denny, our producer, and now Denny can't get back a hold of him because I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news, but there was a lot of storms and stuff going on in D.C. last night. A huge storm rippled through there, and then also a lot of rolling power outages because of all the air conditioning.
Good Lord, I was looking at the Weather Channel this morning. They said there are over 250,000 people without power in like the Ohio Valley.
Yeah.
Wow.
Remind
me not to move there.
Remember that power outage that happened was it 05? Remember
the big Midwest one?
Yeah. It started I think in Canada, but it rippled through Ohio and it came here.
Yeah.
It's a good thing it didn't happen to us this time.
I'm astounded at how hammered they get. I always look at, when I'm looking at the weather, everything really, really bad goes just south of us. You ever notice that? Yeah. We'll get like 4 inches of snow and Pennsylvania get like 18 inches of snow.
When I didn't really notice that until I lived in Cleveland, and then I noticed it forcibly.
Anything on the lake.
Anything. Lake County in Ohio is just
it's awful.
Nuts. I mean, it's like Alaska there.
Yeah.
Same thing with Buffalo. If you go to the other side of Lake Erie.
Well, and speaking of Ohio, I saw a thing on the Travel Channel on Cedar Point the other day on how they have to do so many engineering checks on their equipment because it's so windy there.
Right. Yeah.
In Sandusky because
right
they're
on the
right
lake.
on the lake. Right. Yeah. So they're constantly doing checks. They go through those things every single day, which makes me happy.
So we finally got a hold of Dan. Welcome to the program, Dan. Oh, maybe he's not quite on yet. Is he there? He's still trying to put him on. No, don't click the thing.
I'm not touching.
He's probably still trying to. He may have put Dan's name up there, but maybe he hasn't gotten a hold of him.
Well, let's go into the marijuana policy project. Oh, there he is.
Oh, there he is.
Then Dan can tell us all by himself.
Hey, Dan, are you there?
Yeah, hey.
Hey, welcome to the program, and thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
See, I wanted to play this. Now, this is a really long piece, so I'll apologize, but this is like a 4-minute piece from CNN, and I wanted you to hear it because I wanted to discuss how this may affect us. Don't you think that the new policy or potentially new policy in Uruguay may have some effect on us in the end?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So let's check this out.
Let's play the piece, and then we'll talk.
Listen to this. Oh, not that. We weren't trying to do that.
I'm sorry, I was busy.
Yeah, come on, Ryan.
Brazil's neighbor, Uruguay, backing a radical new plan to crack down on drug crime and make money in the process. Get this, the country's president wants the government to become the sole legal seller of marijuana. CNN's Rafael Romo explains why now.
A certain green leafy plant brought to you for your pleasure by your very own government. It may sound like a far-fetched idea in the United States, but in the small South American nation of Uruguay, that's exactly what the government is proposing.
De las 4 drogas más consumidas.
3 out of the 4 most consumed drugs are already legal. Alcohol, the most popular, tobacco, the second most popular, medications, and the 4th one, marijuana, which is consumed by approximately 300,000 people.
Marijuana possession for personal use is already legal in Uruguay, but production and distribution is not. The proposal by President José Mujica is to have the government control its production and sale. Government officials say the money drug traffickers currently get would eventually go to public coffers.
It has been internationally recognized that separating the market for marijuana from other drugs has substantially positive effects for the welfare of the population.
Legalizing drugs is not necessarily a new concept in Latin America. Guatemalan President Otto Pérez Molina has proposed legalizing some drugs in Central America as a joint solution for rampant violence in the region caused by drug trafficking. Former President Vicente Fox, who governed Mexico from 2000 to 2006, says legalization is a way of reducing violence.
When the violence reached its peak in Chicago 100 years ago with the alcohol prohibition, the only answer and solution came by authorizing back again the consumption of alcohol.
But other leaders like Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos say legalization by individual countries may have negative implications for the region.
I agree that we have to discuss where we are and where to go. But talking about legalization at this moment, I think it's counterproductive unless it's a world approach.
All right, so Rafael Romo joins me now live. So Rafael, this bill still has to be approved by Uruguay's Congress. Before I ask you if that's likely to happen, this is interesting because this is the government control. This isn't just decriminalization or legalizing it and opening it to free trade. This is the government controlling that. Is that likely to happen?
Well, this is not by any means open market for drugs. Right. Any entrepreneur can start growing their own marijuana and start selling it. This is the government coming in and telling people, I am going to be in control. I am going to produce it, I am going to sell it, and I'm going to control distribution. That's what's interesting about this proposal in Uruguay. And to answer the second question, it is very likely that it'll pass sometime this summer. The president, his party controls the Uruguayan Congress, the Frente Amplio, broad front, and so he has the votes to pass it through Congress.
So if this works and the drug crime goes down, can we expect Uruguay to look at legalizing or selling other drugs besides that, besides marijuana?
You have a number of countries, not very likely, they're equating marijuana with alcohol. Yeah. And you have a number of countries in the region that have a very hard stance against illegal drugs. I'm talking about Colombia, further north. I'm talking about Mexico. And also today, the head of the UN Nations on Drug Policy Control says that Uruguay, if they approve this, would be in violation of international agreements. So it remains to be seen if this actually becomes law, what's the international community going to do about it?
It's interesting because there are a number of municipalities and cities and states here in the U.S. looking at not government regulation of it or selling it, but to decriminalize it and have it on the free market. That's the only way they believe is to regulate it. So interesting. We'll see. Okay. Rafael Romo, thank you very much for that.
I think we will see. I saw this earlier. I've been kind of paying attention to it because this is not a news story. It's been going around for a while, but now that it's getting close to passing, and they say it is, we better, start rubbing our hands together and figuring out what this means or what it doesn't mean.
Well,
and I would predict that, given the situation with the treaty in play and the violation of the treaty and the UN position and other things, Dan Riffle, what do you think this means or doesn't mean for us here in the U.S.?
Well, I think it's too early for anybody to really say what it will or will not mean, but certainly, raises my curiosity. I'm very interested in the international response. There's a lot of different pieces to talk about in that segment, but I do think the international response is probably the most significant, particularly within South America, since, it affects them most directly. They talk very briefly about legalization in individual countries and whether or not that will work, and it does raise some sort of concerns about, drug tourism, for example, people from Brazil just coming down to Uruguay to get some free or relatively cheap legal marijuana, and, folks going on drug holidays. So, it does raise some sort of concerns there on whether Uruguay becomes sort of the manufacturing point for countries north, south, east, and west of there. So, maybe it'll trigger a continental shift in policy, at least within South America, shortly thereafter, assuming things go well.
Well, Brazil's a big party on the beach already.
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing. We're guessing at this, but we already have Portugal to look at. They decriminalized all drugs. And this was, 8 years ago? And the international community, said, oh, bad, Portugal, bad. And then they ignored it.
Look what happened.
And
it's a little different with Portugal, though, because Portugal just decriminalized drugs. They didn't actually start manufacturing and selling it.
Yeah, but I don't see the international community overreacting to this. I mean, we already in the United States produce tons and tons and tons of drugs with government stamps on them. We just don't call them Schedule 1.
Yeah, we don't call them drugs either. We call them alcohol and tobacco is what we call them. Yeah.
And the controlled substances. It will be interesting to see what Mexico does. I think any country in South America that takes a look at the violence in Mexico, the extreme loss, particularly of women and children and the civil community in Mexico for those drug wars is going to start trying to plan for that not happening in their country. And I think Uruguay is being extremely proactive by doing this.
I think anytime that you have a couple of countries involved in a policy that causes that much bloodshed on the poorer side of the fence, is aberrant. It's awful.
Yeah, I'm shocked at Mexico still. You have to wonder how many bodies it's going to take for Mexico to do something.
Mexico's been a giant Syria for a long time, but just in a different way.
Yeah. I think that they look to the United States to try to loosen our drug policies or immigration policies to help them out, but that's not necessarily going to do it. And it could help. I'm not saying it couldn't help, but them, and the thing that I remember thinking the first time I heard about the potential policy in Uruguay was good. That will get rid of any government corruption regarding marijuana. Presumably. And I think that is a huge problem with Mexico is that the vast majority of that government is just corrupt.
You used to have to be in Middle South America in order to get kidnapped by some. Not anymore.
No, I know.
Just go right across the border and they'll start scurrying you as far south as they can get you. So, we're placing ourselves at risk. We're putting our friends and neighbors at risk with this, I just think if you look at the Uruguay thing, it has a trend that eventually will trickle down to us. I hate saying those words, but, it will.
Or up.
Trickle up. Trickle up. But
Dan, tell us what you think about Chicago.
Oh, it's very exciting, actually. We've
awesome was
been
that?
working on medical marijuana legislation in Illinois for quite some time. And, we try to avoid talking about both medical marijuana and decrim in the same place at the same time because legislators aren't really terribly familiar with this issue, and you don't want to confuse the two issues. So,
but
what's really interesting about what happened in Chicago is it happened totally organically. You know, I know Drug Policy Alliance has a very small grant to a woman there, Kathy Kane Willis, who was working out of Roosevelt University and was quoted in a couple of stories. But for the most part, there was no real professional lobbying effort. This isn't something where, you know, a dozen people or even a few paid people were, you know, pushing aldermen. As far as I know, the legislation was written by a staffer in Danny Solis' office. Normally, legislation gets written by a lobbyist somewhere. We write a lot of the medical marijuana bills that get introduced around the country. So, for me, that's the most exciting part, is that it was a totally organic process, and legislators are now starting to see the light all on their own without any help from us.
In a broader sense, isn't that what the Marijuana Policy Project is there for, to help spur on independent movement?
Yeah, and we do that at the state level. You know, in our earlier days, you could see us getting involved at the municipal level just because there were fewer fronts in the battle, so to speak. But now the public opinion is where it is, particularly with medical marijuana at 70 or 80%. We do most of our work at the state level and a little bit of work at the federal level, too. So municipal policy is a little too far down in the weeds for us in most cases. So, you know, like I said, we didn't get too terribly involved in the Chicago effort. But it's very exciting to see that they're, you know, at least at the city level, legislative and elected officials are taking this up all on their own without any help from us.
When you look at the state of affairs across the nation, with the states that are doing, you know, because you got two pushes. You got the medical push from some places, both from the legislature and from initiatives. And then you also have, you know, these regulate marijuana like wine type decrim efforts. I guess, you know, and this is everybody ponders this question a lot, but I just kind of wanted to get, you know, reading of the tea leaves from someone like yourself who's got a broader kind of knowledge of these things. How long do you think it's going to be before, you know, we get some kind of budging from the federal government when you've got all these other states doing these things, you know?
Yeah. I don't
26.
really think that, you know, we're already at 17 medical marijuana states now. The difference between 17 states and 20 states and 15 states and even 25 states is really not that significant. I think if the federal government was going to budge on medical marijuana, they probably would have by now. To me, the real action in terms of how long it's going to take for the federal government, I think as soon as the state passes a ballot initiative legalizing and regulating and taxing marijuana, much like alcohol, I think that's what it's going to take to see some action at the federal government. And, of course, we had a near miss a couple of years ago in California with Prop 19, and this year we've got I-502 on the ballot in Washington, which the ACLU is pushing. And then in Colorado, you have the Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol initiative, Amendment 64, which the Marijuana Policy Project is backing through a local ballot committee there. So those two initiatives right now are polling a little bit better than Prop 19 was, even before the election when Prop 19 was polling a little over 50%. We're polling, we had a 61% out of Rasmussen a couple months ago, a little bit more conservative poll from public policy polling recently that had it at 46-41 in our favor. And then in Washington, the ACLU's initiative up there is polling actually even a couple points better than ours right now. They've done a great job of getting a lot of institutional support. They've got former U.S. attorneys, pretty much every elected official in Seattle, the mayor, the city attorney, every city council member, every state legislator from the area. So they've got a lot of institutional support up there in Washington. And, I think if either one of those two states pass a ballot initiative, then it sets up a confrontation with the federal government that the feds just can't avoid. And that's what they're trying to do right now with medical marijuana. They're trying to avoid this. They're fighting their battles, very deliberately picking and choosing where they fight and how they fight. You know, so for example, in California, they're not suing to try to overturn the Medical Marijuana Act. They're just sitting, threatening letters to the landlords of medical marijuana dispensaries. They're fighting, on a very low level that's not terribly obvious to the public, because I think even the federal government realizes that medical marijuana enjoys approval ratings above 70%. But once you start getting to an area where a state is trying to completely legalize marijuana and regulate it like alcohol, regulate the production and sale and distribution of marijuana, at that point, federal law is just there's too great a conflict there, and there's going to have to be a resolution.
It seems like the resolution's always been force the state to change their position, because they're the smaller of the two.
Well, I have kind of a two-part question for you, Dan, and
sure.
Forgive me, but
We've only got about a minute left, so I have a question yet to pose that's big too. Go ahead.
All right.
Go.
My first question is how much headway do you think the ACLU is making as far as the right to use marijuana as it relates to the ADA? My second question is I've seen a lot, and this is completely anecdotal, but it seems to me that the correction as far as the federal government and marijuana being a Schedule I substance is going to end up having to be a lawsuit, not legislative, because it doesn't seem like any of the politicians are ever going to move on it. I guess we can wait till after the break. I think we're about to go to break, are we not?
Yes, we are about to go to the break. Can you hang on for just
for 2 seconds and think about your fascinating answers?
More like 2 minutes. We'll be right back.
More of your calls next. We gotta bend over or no? Yeah, you gotta. Okay. Steve and Rick will be right back after this. The Medical Marijuana Radio Network.
Hey, Steve Greene here for the Medical Marijuana Certifications at AMMP. They're the American Medical Marijuana Professionals. You'll find them just north of Utica Road on Gratiot in Roseville. Their address is 28349. Now, call-ins are welcome, but you're better off calling for an appointment. They have a toll-free number, 877-RX-420-99. That's 877-RX-420-99 for American Medical Marijuana Professionals. That's AMMP on Gratiot in Roseville.
If you or someone you know received a traffic ticket, has been charged with a misdemeanor, drinking and driving, criminal offense, or has had their driver's license taken away, they need an attorney. They need attorney Glenn McCandless. He's helped hundreds of people solve their legal problems over the past 16 years.
My law firm is dedicated to providing quality legal services at affordable rates.
Call us at 586-755-2900. Again, that's 586-755-2900. Call now.
It's the Medical Marijuana Radio Show.
I threw a wish in the well. Don't ask me, I'll never tell. I looked to you as it fell. And now you're in my way.
We're back.
That was not 2 minutes. Okay,
It was.
Just for the record.
It was 2 minutes.
So not 2 minutes.
So about 20, what is that? 22 or 3 minutes before the top of the hour.
Yes.
It is scorching hot outside, but not as scorching hot as it was in D.C. You guys got some big storms out there, didn't you, Dan?
Yeah, we did. We set it was a record high for the month of June yesterday. We had 104 degrees, and then had a storm roll through later on last night that was creating winds of around 70, 75 miles an hour. There's trees down all over Capitol Hill where I'm at right now. So
welcome to global
quite a day
warming.
weather-wise.
Welcome to global warming. That can be our next project, by the way, after we've legalized marijuana.
Huff and pluff and blow your Capitol down.
Well, the polar ice caps melt.
We have to call it climate change.
The Atlantic stops circulating.
So your question was?
My questions were, I've contemplated this for a while because I do, in addition to business transaction law, I do represent clients in ADA cases and in EEOC cases and this kind of thing. But there hasn't been a really good carve out for marijuana use as it relates to the ADA. But the vast majority of people who are using marijuana for the purposes for medicinal purposes and not, decrim recreational purposes, have verifiable disabilities. And yet we had that decision out of the Ninth Circuit, which sort of alluded to the fact that they're not going to protect people with disabilities and their right to use medical marijuana because technically it's not really a right. So you can comment on that, and then we'll talk about the legislative versus lawsuit angle for decriminalizing marijuana at a federal level.
Yeah, well, I think you pretty much covered it there on your question relating to the ADA. I mean, the court interpretations that I've seen are that you do have to accommodate someone if they have an injury or a disability in the workplace. You have to make reasonable accommodations. But the court opinions that I've seen are that, because federal law says marijuana is not a medication, that it has no medical value, that there's no need for employers to accommodate that use.
It's interesting because people in Michigan, that's my only perspective at this point, come into my office all the time and they've been arrested for whatever, and marijuana related. And they said, I thought I had a right to do this. And I'm like, no, you never had a right to use marijuana. Yeah. I'm sorry. But it's unfortunate because I think the impression that we gave people in Michigan, and this is what we're still struggling with, is that they do have a right to use marijuana. That hasn't really existed since the early 1900s when we decided to start regulating and criminalizing lots of things we put in our bodies. But it's interesting. I would like to see a great ADA case at some point regarding someone's right to use medical marijuana. Do you know of any?
I mean, I have not seen any that have gotten beyond the circuit level because it's sort of a slam dunk as long as medical marijuana or as long as marijuana is still a Schedule I substance at the federal level.
Yeah.
I mean, the best case in Michigan so far that's come along was the Joe Casillas case.
Yes.
Everybody's familiar with that, and I believe the ACLU is appealing that right now. They lost at the district court level.
They're at the Sixth Circuit. I haven't heard a thing recently, and I haven't managed to look it up on my casemaker lately. Yeah. But I'm fearful that they are going to uphold his right to be accommodated for his disability, just not with that evil marijuana because it's Schedule I, which is unfortunate.
Okay, real quick. I thought this as a shot over the bow, even though our Chief Justice this week in affirming the Obamacare Act, as it's how people like to call it Obamacare. I don't know why. But the Affordable Health Care Act is constitutional.
Yeah, it's a coming.
And so, thank goodness. I mean, as bad as the economy is and as rough as we've had it, if you're poor, you've been down and out for a while now, and more than you can remember in your entire life in this country. I say there's a lot of great stuff happening. I think that's one of the things. But here's where this relates to policy. Marijuana policy. And I just wanted to get your opinion on this, Dan. Did you notice that the Chief Justice, in saying that, hey, the Affordable Health Care Act it's not an appropriate function of the Commerce Clause in the Constitution to be putting this under. But you can tax them. So because what he said was, and he clearly stated it, that states may not undertake policies that undermine federal law. And so I just, will they use this if regulate marijuana like wine or, these other decrim issues happen? Will they use this Supreme Court ruling to shoot down these medical marijuana or these, repeal laws?
Yeah, well, a couple things. First of all, a little vocabulary background. When we talk about decriminalization, that's what's happening in Chicago, where marijuana is still illegal. It's just punished civilly by fine.
Right.
When we talk about what's going on in Colorado and Washington, that's much further than decriminalization. That's
full-on
regulating marijuana. That's fully legalizing marijuana.
Right.
But going back to the Affordable Care Act interpretation, the Roberts' decision distinguished Gonzalez v. Raich, which is the medical marijuana case that everybody's familiar with. Gonzalez v. Raich, of course, involved a medical marijuana patient in California who was growing marijuana for her own use in her own backyard, so it was neither interstate nor commerce. Nonetheless, in that case, the Supreme Court said that because it affects interstate commerce, because her activity affects interstate commerce, the federal government can regulate it, including prohibiting it. Now, in this case, with the Affordable Care Act, what the Chief Justice said is that we're talking about people who are not buying insurance, and that is not activity. Just not buying anything is, you're not doing anything. That's inactivity. The federal government can regulate activity if it affects interstate commerce, but it cannot regulate inactivity. And so for the Roberts perspective, which, by the way, Alito and Scalia and Thomas would agree with, the federal government cannot regulate matters that are inactivity because it doesn't sufficiently affect interstate commerce. So they would distinguish that from Raich, where we're talking about an actual activity. They would, and did say, in that case at least, a couple of justices did say, 6 justices, including Scalia, did say in that case that the federal government can regulate that because it is activity and it does affect interstate commerce. And, of course, the liberal justices who wrote the bulk of the Gonzalez v. Raich decision would say that anything that affects interstate commerce, even inactivity, is what they said in this Affordable Care Act case, that does affect interstate commerce, and so the federal government can regulate it. And so I think even though the ACA decision that came down, the Obamacare decision that came down last week, even though John Roberts did say that that is too far to be valid under the Commerce Clause, he would say that Raich is a different matter. Raich goes a little further because she was actually growing marijuana. That's an activity that she's undertaken, so the federal government can regulate that. And, of course, the liberal justices on the court would agree. So I don't think there's been any really seismic shift in the court's Commerce Clause jurisprudence as it relates to drug policy just yet.
So back to this sort of ties into my second question. I can't foresee anybody in the White House decriminalizing or legalizing or moving marijuana to Schedule 2 or 3 or 4. Certainly not during an election year. I can't see them doing it at all because they've had all sorts of time to do it. I'm wondering if it's going to take a lawsuit. What do you think?
Well,
weren't they already sued by
eight? Not, because I don't think our side would win that lawsuit. What I think is more likely is that Colorado or Washington passes their initiative this year, and in so doing, completely legalizes marijuana and regulates its production and use. Now, there's no question that state can remove criminal penalties for the use of marijuana. Even the Controlled Substances Act says that the act does not preempt state laws unless they directly conflict with federal law. And there's a separate portion of constitutional law that I'm sure you're familiar with that says that the federal government cannot commandeer state resources. And what that's been interpreted to say is that the federal government can't tell states that they should make or must make a particular activity illegal. If the federal government wants to make marijuana illegal, it can, but it can't force the state of Colorado to also make it illegal under state law or force Colorado police to enforce marijuana laws. And so there's no question that the state of Colorado can remove criminal penalties for use, possession, and even manufacture of marijuana. What our act also does, though, is it regulates that use. And so you have state resources being used to regulate the production and distribution of marijuana. That means going into production facilities and investigating to make sure that they're in compliance with safety regulations. It means collecting taxes. It means otherwise facilitating the actual distribution and sale of marijuana. And so that's a step further, and that could be ruled invalid under the Controlled Substances Act. It'll depend on what the court has to say in that case, but it's a closed case, obviously.
So at what point? But even though the Constitution prohibits the federal government from telling the state what it can and cannot do with its resources, it can commit legal extortion by saying, okay, we won't give you any Medicaid dollars, Colorado, if you don't recriminalize marijuana or start, whatever it is that we want.
Right.
The same thing they did with alcohol. No federal road dollars.
Exactly.
You can't, raise your drinking age to 21 and do all this other stuff, or we're not going to give you any federal road dollars. I mean, the federal government may not have power to tell the states what to do, but they sure as heck hold the purse strings.
Yeah. So that's one way that they could do it. They could, use the extortion option as you described it, or they could go into court and say that the regulatory part of the act is preempted by the Controlled Substances Act. What I think is more likely, and I know it sounds far-fetched now, but public opinion is moving pretty rapidly. We had the Hinchy-Rohrbacher amendment in Congress a couple months ago. Got about 165 votes for that. And what the Hinchy-Rohrbacher amendment is it says to the Department of Justice, as it relates to medical marijuana, you cannot use any federal tax dollars to supersede state law. And so basically it's a way of saying we think that the federal government should be out of the game when it comes to regulating marijuana, and we should leave it to the states. And I think if Colorado or Washington is able to pass their initiative, I think you're likely to see a pretty strong effort in Congress to leave marijuana policy up to the states, to avoid that standoff altogether. Because it's from a Republican perspective, from a conservative perspective, there's a large part of the conservative wing that bends towards the libertarian angle, and they're
States'
very
rights.
much opposed to marijuana prohibition. And from the Democratic Party's angle, most of the Democratic Party is in support of legalization of marijuana. Most Democratic politicians understand that and are rapidly shifting. I mean, the Congressional Black Caucus, for example, used to be rabidly anti-drug, and now you've got folks like John Conyers who are actually sponsoring legislation to remove marijuana from, to take the federal government out of marijuana prohibition altogether.
Yeah, and most
so
conservative
I think you'll see
politicians
that effort really pick up steam if either initiative passes.
I agree, because one of the ways you get the Republican Party and the Libertarians on board is to show them how it improves your manufacturing base and it makes your state self-sufficient, and then they're all on board. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see the federal government actually legalize marijuana at the federal level and facilitate regulation itself the way that the federal government is in the game on alcohol and cigarettes. But I do think it's conceivable, in fact likely, that you'll see the federal government say, okay, you know what, we're going to take marijuana, we're going to end federal marijuana prohibition. We're not going to actually collect taxes. We're not going to regulate this thing, but if the states want to prohibit it...
I hope you're right, Dan. I hope you're right.
If the states want to legalize it, then states can do that.
Dan, we are out of time. I apologize, but I do want to thank you for coming on the show because you've given us some great insight.
And please come back. Please come back.
We'll do anytime. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you very much. Ryan with the Cannabis News, the Radio Cannabis News, coming up next on the Medical Marijuana Radio Show.
More of your calls next. 818-4 423-2350. We'll be right back after this on the Medical Marijuana Radio Show.
The Medical Marijuana Radio Network.
Well, this formula is specifically to grow cannabis.
That's Ray Kogo for Kogo's Original Cannabis Formula Nutrients.
Now, everybody knows that large buds and tight buds come from genetics, and then the amount of light you use. The other part is having the correct nutrients that the plant's going to use. Mine specifically to grow cannabis, so it's going to get everything that it needs.
Ray knows what you may not. Those nutrient companies you can get in most grow shops are not cannabis specific. That means they take the stuff out of the bloom that your plant needs in bloom. You can get Kogo's Original Cannabis Formula Nutrients too. It's just 2 1-gallon jugs that make over 600 gallons of nutrients, all for less than $100. See the difference for yourself.
More trichomes, bigger buds, faster growth, and for less money.
Go to cannabisformula.com or call Ray direct at 517-375-8998. That's 517-375-8998. Kogo's Original Cannabis Formula Nutrients. The Committee for a Safer Michigan is collecting signatures to put repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults on the November ballot, and we need your help. Outlawing marijuana has not reduced its availability, made society safe, nor reduced access for minors. Marijuana prohibition has wasted limited tax dollars, put otherwise law-abiding citizens in handcuffs, eroded the public's relationship with law enforcement, and denied relief to seriously ill, injured, and dying citizens that were supposed to be protected by the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. The Committee for a Safer Michigan is working to legalize marijuana for adults, and we need your help to put it on the ballot. Go to repealtoday.org to find out more about this historic effort. That's repealtoday.org to learn more, or call 269-548-8422 to end prohibition and sign the petition. Ending marijuana prohibition will reduce access by minors, allow law enforcement to focus on violent crime, reduce gang activity and organized crime, and create jobs by allowing a new Michigan hemp industry. Paid for with regulated funds by the Committee for a Safer Michigan, 2930 East Jefferson Avenue, Detroit, Michigan, 48207.
Oh, shit, baby. Yeah. We did it again. And this time, I'ma make you scream.
The Medical Marijuana Radio Show.
Oh boy, we got a lot to scream through in the last few minutes of the show, starting out with Ryan with the Cannabis News. Take it away, Ryan.
All right. According to the UN report on global drug use, cannabis was the world's most widely produced, trafficked, and consumed drug in 2010. Marijuana boasts somewhere between 119 million and 224 million users worldwide. Chicago City Council voted overwhelmingly to decriminalize marijuana possession, joining a wave of states and big cities around the country. Vermont has already started receiving applications to open the first medical marijuana dispensaries in the state. They hope to be open before the end of the year. This will give legal means for acquiring medical marijuana. And the Supreme Court ruled in favor of health care for all Americans in the United States. That's the medical marijuana news.
Wow. And Samuel Alito not mentioned in there. Look at that. So we got about 3 minutes to squeeze in Eric Gunnels. Eric is running for office in, what township is it, Eric? Hello, Eric?
Genesee County.
Yeah, but it's Genesee County, but you're running in a township election, aren't you?
Say again there, Steve?
Aren't you running in a township election?
Yes, a township election, Thetford Township in Genesee County.
Thetford Township, that's what I was saying. So you're running as trustee, yes?
Yes.
And what does a trustee do? It's kind of like isn't it kind of like a position on the city council kind of thing? It's the same kind of deal?
Yes, there are 7 board members to each township in Michigan, and there are 4 trustee positions. I'm going to be sitting in one of them, hopefully, this fall if I win it. And the primary election is August 7th. And I definitely could use some campaign finance support because it's still an election. It's still you have to have money for your campaign in order to pay for signage and so forth, and advertisements and so forth. And it's going to be a good race. I think I have a very good chance of winning it. I have pretty popular, not to pat my own back, but I am pretty popular in my little region up here.
Well, it's important.
You're popular everywhere, Eric. Let's not. You're popular everywhere.
Well, thank you, Denise.
You're welcome.
By the way, guys, I want to definitely thank you guys last week for giving me such an honorable promotion plug there. You guys said a lot for me, and I was supposed to call in last week, but I was so stressed out I had to medicate early. Kind kind of do my whole meditation thing.
So,
But I watched the show last week, and you guys have a great show, and I really want to applaud you guys. Thank you, Denise, and thank you to Rick Thompson and you too, Steve.
Hey, did you say you were doing some fundraising? You got a fundraiser going on?
Or a website?
Yes. Actually, the best way to track what I'm doing right now is for my Facebook. I'm still getting my website up, but yes, we're having an event the 3rd of July at the New Market Fire Station in downtown Flint, and you can just go to my Facebook page. I'll have flyers up on it there. It's going to be a good time, and we're going to have mostly it's going to be a fun, entertaining event. If people want to give me donations there, that's fine. But for the most part, it's just for the patients and caregivers and to have a good time.
Eric, your Facebook page being?
I'm sorry, Denise.
Can you give us the address for your Facebook page, please, or how to find you for those of us who don't know how to spell your last name? I do.
Right, Eric Gunnels, and. But what did you want there, Denise?
The Facebook page. How people get to your Facebook page.
Oh,
He probably doesn't have the actual address.
You don't?
No.
It's not like
It's what's your handle on Facebook? How do you go? Is it just Eric Gunnels?
Yeah, just Eric Gunnels.
Okay, so GUNNELS for the public out there, and you're having it's the 3rd. It's a Tuesday.
Yes, the 3rd.
I can finally come! Yay! Tuesday is not one of my days with my kids, so I can make it. Yay!
Okay, so we got just a couple of seconds left in the show, Eric. I apologize, but we got to run along because we're trying to give away Cedar Point tickets. Are you going to come with us on July 14th? No.
I'd like to try there, Steve. I'd like to try, definitely.
All right. Well, we hope to see you out there. Thanks for coming on, and good luck on the business with running for office. I think that's an exciting new thing you've reached out to do.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you guys for promoting me. I love you guys.
Very welcome.
Continue on.
My pleasure. So we're getting ready to play the contest. The contest is called Toker Trivia. And so we'll start the Toker Trivia theme. We're trying to give away tickets to Cedar Point. Now, incidentally, we've only got 2 sets of tickets to give away. So we'll try and get a second person to play in case we don't get a winner. I want to give at least 1 pair of tickets away now because we got 2 sets to give away. We got 1 more to maybe give away next weekend, and then we go. Dave is on the phone with us. Dave, where are you from, Dave?
I'm out of Redford, Michigan.
Dave's in Redford. Okay, so we got to ask you a question. Did you come up with a question, Ryan? Do you have a backup question?
I'll have a backup question.
Oh, good Lord.
I'll come up with a backup.
I don't trust it. I don't trust it. Do you have a backup question, Denise?
Sure, I'll make one up.
There you go.
Go ahead, ask your question.
I sat and steamed till I fell asleep last night. No. So, the question I'm going to post, you got 20 seconds to answer this question. If you get it correct, then you win. So I'm going to go ahead and let you start with your question. Do you have a question? No?
I have a question.
Okay. We'll let Denise. Well, Denise is going to ask the question. Go ahead and start the question, and as soon as you're done, I'll start the contest timer.
All right. What percentage of Michigan voters voted to approve the 2008 Medical Marijuana Act?
Exact percentage?
Yeah.
Let's say.
We said this on last week's show?
We say it all the time.
60.
You're halfway there.
7.
Oh! No, it's 63.
Really trying to give these away.
I thought that was an easy one.
Are we going to let him try a backup question?
Try a backup question.
Well, no, I mean, we had another person that was on the line. I don't know what happened to them, but I don't know. Can we do it again? Can we do another one? I can't believe they didn't get that one.
We can.
I had to be close.
Were you listening last week?
Well, statistically, you were close because if it's a 5 and 5, but I'm still not going to give it to you.
you made the margin of error, but it didn't. Yeah. It was close, but no cigar. Okay, so did you listen last week by chance, Steve? Did you have a chance to?
I've heard this say it 1,000 times. I just don't have it memorized.
No, I'm saying, were you listening last week to last week's show? Because that's okay. So I'll ask you a question from last week's show, and you might have caught a bit of it on this one. This is I'm giving you a second swing at the bat here. We really want you to go to Cedar Point, Dave.
Do you like the rides? Do you ride the rides, Dave?
We don't have enough time. Go.
Come on, look, you're screwing with me. So Ryan needs a gag over there sometimes. Okay, so the question is, do you remember the name of the lady at the Balloon Fest that told us to go away, to buzz off. Do you remember her? I'll just either the first. It was Michelle.
Yes, Michelle Token.
Yay!
Good job. Woo, we finally gave something away. Good job, Dave.
Hang on, Dave. We're going to give you some Cedar Point tickets. I'd have taken Michelle or Token. That was the answer. We're all out of time. Next week, giving away tickets to Cedar Point again, and then also we got some prizes from Puff Danny and maybe some stuff coming back from Hydro Hut. Join us next week on the Medical Marijuana Radio Show. Thanks for coming, Ryan. Thanks for coming, Denise. Woo! Happy 4th of July. Celebrate. Woo!
The Medical Marijuana Radio Show and RadioWeedShow.com are trademarks. Copyright 2011.
The comments, ideas, and opinions expressed in the preceding program are those of the